You're now listening to the Something Good Podcast Network. Please press any key to continue.
A kiss, as defined by Dan Webster, is something pleasing, a caress, a gentle touch. But there's another kiss that isn't in Webster's.
Hey world, we're kids!
Some critics say they don't make music, they just make noise.
Yeah, Kiss sucks!
Kiss implies the extreme in the theatrics on stage, utilizing fire and smoke and bizarre costumes, and the ever-consistent, constant concealment of their true identities.
Speaking of which, Kiss is going to have its own comic book soon.
Take Kiss with you. It's fun. Show your friends and be the first. Now.
Oh my God, no time to turn!
And welcome once again to No Time to Turn, a Kiss Nerd podcast.
Nerds.
As always, I am with Cap and Alex from the Something Good For You Network.
Yo, yo.
What's going on, everybody?
And you do know it's just the Something Good Network.
Whatever. I've been saying it wrong all this time. You've never corrected me until now. How many episodes are we into this thing? And you don't want to... So I've been an asshole for like 30 fucking episodes or whatever.
He's an employee of the Something Good Network too, I guess.
You know what? It isn't something good for you. It's just something good. And it's not very good because...
something mediocre for you.
It's something pretty goddamn mean.
Well, I just figured at some point,
Alex.
with all the times you promote the Facebook and look at the artwork, you would just see the top where it says Something Good Network.
Well,
I just thought at some point...
The show is something good for you.
Yes, that's one of the
So
shows.
I was on point.
Yeah, you were on point. That's why I never corrected you until now. I just felt like doing it. Plus, it made for a good intro.
Well, thank you for tuning in for this week's episode.
Yep.
Plus, it made for a good intro.
I am Asshole, your host.
No. Lauren, all right, sorry, y'all. Now he's going to be acting like this the whole episode.
I'm going to be butthurt. Well, I'm going to be butthurt because this episode is for Hot in the Shade.
Yeah.
An album which I'm going to go ahead and preface by saying, I remember when this album came out. I did not buy it. I have never heard this album ever in its entirety until this week. I knew the singles and that was it.
I didn't either before this week.
So everything I'm getting is off of hearing it one time in preparation for this show because I've never heard this album before.
So why did we overlook it? And did you dig this album when you were like a budding Kiss fan, Alex?
I mean, I had to hear every album.
Well, yeah, but how did you like this when you were first, exposed to it?
Honestly, it had very much a different feel than the whole rest of the records did. Like even the drum sound was very different. And one thing I immediately noticed even as a kid was how long it was.
Yeah, it's an hour, roughly.
This is a long album.
And also, when I was digging into Kiss, it was during the internet age, but MP3s really weren't embraced yet. It was available. Rhapsody was around, things like that. But, especially in my house, we were not paying for MP3s. We were not paying for a digital thing we could not hold in our hand. So when we went to Best Buy or the local record store, you couldn't actually even find Hot in the Shade. They had some of the original CDs, a handful of the remasters as they were slowly coming out. But you couldn't find Hot in the Shade.
Well, by that era, they were really pushing the makeup stuff because they were doing the reunion. So
exactly.
That makes sense.
So it even took me a while to even find it. And once I did find it, I was like,
Was this ever... I think this is the last album that was actually issued brand new on vinyl.
Yes, it was. And
which is weird to me because I don't understand how they would have squeezed an hour's worth of music on vinyl.
Oddly enough, that was one of my notes that they were able to do that.
Was that direct metal mastering kind of deal?
It was, and it said the extra runtime actually did cause audio issues.
Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah, so like multiple sources from that era were saying that even though it didn't sound that great to start with, the vinyl did not help.
Well, before we get there, let's just talk about where we jumped off last episode. Kiss was very fragmented, as we were talking about. It seems from an outside perspective that they were all looking at avenues of establishing themselves outside of Kiss in any variety of ways. And of course, we were talking about Paul actually having his own management group. He's matching Gene toe for toe, but without any success. He's unable to get acting gigs. He's unable to have any success with any of the bands he's representing.
And actually, between those episodes, I kind of went back and re-listened to segments of Paul's book and Gene's book. The only thing Paul doesn't actually mention is his management company. But to my surprise, and just to kind of give it his due, he actually does mention trying to manage other bands and trying to get movie roles and not succeeding in them. Yeah. But it was all under the guise of, it didn't seem like he was trying to find an escape plan. The way he was painting it, to use another Paul reference, the way he's painting it was more or less, he was bored and needed something to do.
Yeah, he does that with when mentioning his solo band too.
Well, you know what? I was listening to Kiss in that era and was bored and needed something. At some point in early '89, the band's deal with Polygram ends. They've fulfilled their contractual obligations.
Finally.
But I can find no information that they made any effort to sign with a different label.
No.
Instead, it seems like they just took the only substantive offer that they had, which of course remained with Polygram. And I guess it has something to do with the idea that they're now starting to be regarded as what they call a legacy act. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting though, to note that at this point they're only 15 years old.
Yeah.
But back then that seemed like a pretty lengthy tenure.
Now, when you were looking up the information for for them re-signing, did it mention for how many records or for how long?
I have the deal was a 10-year deal, and in that 10 years they're to deliver 7 albums, which is a pretty sweet deal. That puts them kind of in a position that, you know, it would hard for them to be backwards if they were to be dropped.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised that Polygram re-signed them, but I think it's only because, you know, even however modest of a success, Crazy Nights wasn't the big 12 million seller that they had hoped it to be.
Right.
Everyone was projecting it to be. Everyone thought this was going to be a massive album, and it sold, you know, and we say paltry, but for the era, it was a paltry million copies.
Yeah.
Back then, you know, there was a glass ceiling that was being shattered on the regular by everybody's everything. Guns N' Roses came out of the chute with Appetite for Destruction and sold 14 million records. I mean, it was insane. Everybody's selling 12, 14, 15 million records, it seems like. And here Kiss, this, you know, quote unquote legacy act. Oh, you got a million seller. Oh, good job, guys. You know. Also, at this point, they hire Larry Mazer as a manager. And I guess his deal here is to be more of a creative manager, whereas Jesse Hilson, continues to maintain a position as a business manager.
Right.
Mazer has seen success primarily with Cinderella. He was the manager of Cinderella. I think he was representing the band Nelson at the same time.
Again, who's doing who today? And let's talk to them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think Mazer actually approaches. No, you know what? I'm not. I think that's actually wrong. I think they approached him.
Huh. Okay.
But he has ultimatums, and one of them is for Gene. This is interesting to me. He tells Gene has to drop all extracurricular activities and focus in 100% on Kiss. If I'm going to manage Kiss, I'm managing Kiss, a band, not the members doing their own little thing. This seems to be a moot point with Paul, because if Paul's doing his own little thing, he's not seeing any results on it, so it's completely irrelevant to the issue. Gene, for whatever modest success he may claim, I mean, think about it. He's making movies like Never Too Young to Die.
Yeah, and managing bands
like House of Lords.
Yeah,
and putting out records by House of Lords.
Which I do find funny.
Liza Minnelli, I don't understand this one at all.
I don't think that label lasted long at all either. The Simmons Records.
Yeah.
No, it lasted a year. But no, what I do find funny though, not to get too far ahead, oddly enough, there is a lot of documentation about this tour on online because they were planning on making an Exposed 2.
Right, we'll get to that.
Exactly. But during that time, I kind of put it on the background. I was just listening, just to kind of pick up on the vibes of how people were kind of interacting backstage at the time. Their camera guy was catching like an MTV interview, and they were asking everyone what their favorite bands are, like of the current era. What does the fucking Gene say? House of Lords with this song.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, it's like he's pumping his own thing, and the band and the other members start railing him for it. Like Paul's like, "Oh, did you not want to mention yada yada? Or what about yada yada?" And they were all bands he was like quote unquote managing, just like making fun of them.
Well, I mean, it's fair game because none of them did well.
No, and I do have to say also, I think that the manager making that declaration of saying, you need to focus more on Kiss and not your outside things, I think that was Paul speaking through him. Because Paul makes a lot of mention on trying to get Gene reeled back in.
It makes no sense. Paul's doing the same thing. I think there's a lot of jealousy involved that Gene's having what Paul sees as success, and Paul's having no comebacks for anything.
Well, is it that? See, I
think exactly what it is.
Well, what I say is it that, or is it him being upset over? Because you do see it in the interviews that are posted. Gene is still taking a lot of credit for 80s Kiss stuff at the time. Is it that, or is Paul genuinely getting annoyed that he's running off, not paying attention, left him holding the bag, and is still trying to take the 50-50 credit? And he's
probably both.
And just kind of got to the point.
That's probably a sizable part of it too. Sure.
So that's more or less where I lean with it. I mean, if Paul had success, would we be hearing about it as much? Maybe not as much. Again, I do give some that credence. It's like, if he had more success, we probably wouldn't be bitching about it as much.
Paul does go and does the first proactive solo venture outside of Kiss.
Basically, he says to clear his own head.
Well, or establishing himself as a solo act.
We're looking for an exit plan, much like everybody else.
I just think that everyone's looking for their way out because, I mean, it was probably, and I don't see this, I've not seen this stated anywhere. This is speculative, but I'm sure it was in their head that, hey, we may not get a renewal on this contract. We may be out of luck. This might be it. This wasn't what we thought it was going to be. This was our last big effort, and it didn't happen. Well, surprise, surprise, they do get re-signed, and now they've got to deliver something. But as we talked about in the previous episode, money is not readily available. It's not 1977 anymore, not 1979 anymore. The money has been pretty well spent. Now they have to deliver an album.
And they're managing themselves.
And it seems like to me they're taking any advance they got and pocketing it because this album is essentially a hodgepodge of demos. They're pretty open to this. This is all demos with a sizable amount of overdubs and cleanups to give it some cohesion.
Well, I mean, the way Gene spins it, like we know the truth, but Gene's phrasing is in his book. He has the audacity to say the money was flowing more than it was in 1977.
Probably just them.
It was flowing out of their pockets. to other bills. Absolutely.
Well, but of course he wasn't phrasing it like that. But the thing is from that, of course we're nerds. We all, Cap and I are big Star Wars fans. So to quote Star Wars, from a certain perspective, he actually might be right.
That's true from a certain point. Man, you know what?
If I
was Luke Skywalker and Ben Kenobi came over and said, you lied to me about my dad. Well, it was true from a certain point of view. Fuck you, motherfucker. You old motherfucking lying ass. I can't believe he didn't just slap the shit out. Of course, his hand would have gone right through.
But my point is,
anyway.
But think about what we discussed during the 70s episodes. So many hands were in the pie, especially Bill of Coins. So Kiss themselves weren't getting as much. There may have been more money coming into the Kiss Corporation, but they weren't putting their hands on as much. I wonder if by cutting the fat with management, going to the cheaper recording studio, and doing all these cost-cutting measures while managing themselves and not having so many people taking percentages, if they actually were starting to net a personal income.
I think it's way too early in the game for that, because they were still, I'm sure they had I know they had a lawsuit with Glickman Marks on outs on this. I don't have details on that, but I know it happened.
And didn't they have the tax payout around the same time too?
Which they sold, we said they solved by, selling their publishing to Hori America, which Mazer says he would never have let them do it a million years, but then again, who knows? Well, let's go ahead and let's attack this track by track. And I've got to state again, this was my first time ever hearing this album. So these are impressions that I wrote as I was listening to it. We'll start straight away. Is it even fair to call this side one? I mean, do people regard this as a vinyl album so much anymore?
This really does feel like the first record that kind of
was their first CD. Well, everything back then was cassette, though. It was still the era of the cassette. Everybody I knew that had an album collection, it was all cassette. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The first song right out of the gate is the song "Rise to It,"
with a bunch of slide guitar to kick things off,
played by Paul.
Still odd for a Kiss intro, though, especially in this time period.
I found that to be kind of corny.
It is. I think so. That's what I thought too. I love that kind of like blues slide guitar, but when Paul Stanley does it in a late '80s Kiss album, I agree. It sounds a little corny. It almost sounds like something Bon Jovi would do or something like that.
I think Cinderella had used that as a gimmick, and like, okay, where have you ever heard slide on a Kiss album before? I know. And just like, really, guys? I mean, come on.
It just felt very out of place. Well, like if it had busted into a better song, it may have worked. But it doesn't fit with the song that led into it immediately after at all.
This opening track signals a kind of a back to basics approach to just a straightforward hard rock sound.
Yeah. Good riff.
It's a pretty decent riff, but I'm saying it's important to note that this is saying straight out of the chute that you're not getting Crazy Nights Part 2.
No.
Crazy Nights was very much a pop album. This is very much more of a hard rock album. But then again, you say it's a back to basics approach, but what's the basics anymore? They've tried dabbling in all this different little, they've been playing Follow the Leader for the previous 8 years anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, what identity does Kiss even have at this point? So this isn't stylistically classic Kiss, but
it's a hard rock song.
It's a hard rock song, but it's still kind of completely bland and uninteresting.
And kind of interesting that that this was one of the lead singles, yet it never shows up on a compilation record.
No.
On anything. And in a little bit of research, it's co-written by another guy named Bob Hagelin Jr.
Who wrote stuff with Judas Priest.
Supposedly, Paul and Bob had a fallout.
Go figure.
Because Bob started claiming that he wrote the whole thing in its entirety. And that Paul barely had anything to do with it. And ever since then, Paul's been like... Now, and they don't touch the song. So that's just interesting that it was a lead single. They made a music video, which we'll get to. All this other stuff.
Do you know what this guy does on the flip side?
What?
Bob, what's his name? Bob Hagelin?
Halligan, yeah.
He co-wrote songs that it was Judas Priest. I think he did Take These Chains.
Yep.
He did some Heads Are Gonna Roll, which I always love that song. So I have an argument with some friends about that. This guy's a contemporary Christian music writer. This is his primary gig, and he does this on the side, I guess, to rake in some extra cash. And I just think it's interesting. He's writing. Isn't there kind of a homoerotic kind of line in this song?
We're talking about this the other day.
Yeah.
Which
we're not going to get into it.
I wonder if that's by design or if it was just he was just trying to string a line together. It's kind of a weird line, though.
It is like I said, we won't get into it, but it is a weird line. The line is, "And if you want a lover who can play the other role, I'm gonna rise to it."
Okay, well, hey,
do it to it.
He really can do it.
See, that's a better lyric than they actually used in the chorus, which is, I'm
You know
gonna
what?
rise to it,
and-
and I'm gonna really get to it.
This song might even actually be more fun if they had just played it as a gay anthem. Maybe I don't know.
You know what? That'd have been a great Judas Priest song.
Yeah, maybe. Well,
it starts making sense.
But I mean, honestly, this isn't a good song.
No,
Just nothing about it is really. I mean, like I said, it's inoffensive, but it's just not interesting. It's just. It sounds kind of its time, which leaves it dated permanently and of its time. And I think really, you talk about not appearing on any comps and stuff. I just think it had no impact whatsoever as to warrant being used again for any reason.
That's one of those where, like, I would probably,
but
if I heard it come on,
does.
I think this was also released as the third and final single in 1990, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Next track is called Betrayed. And this holds tiny threads of classic Kiss in the verse parts to me, but it's Gene, and I don't think Gene really can necessarily write any other way than Gene way.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, it's going to naturally harken back to that, and who knows? It may be an ancient idea recycled. I don't know. There are people that I know that are really big into like dissecting the demos and stuff, and these demos are starting to pop up a lot on YouTube now.
Well, because the vault is getting leaked everywhere now.
And I've listened to some of this stuff, and some of it's just like I can see why these songs never got past the demo stage because a lot of it's really bad. Not that this is much better.
but it's
the same like everything else. The verse parts are okay, but the chorus just not there for me. It's just
not for me either.
It's really, really dumb. Just cheesy.
And what's also very interesting is we kind of made a point as to not really dig into, the personal lives of the band members and what was kind of going on behind the scenes, really making it more of a Kiss focused show.
Right.
But it is interesting to note that the co-writer on this song is the one and only Tommy Thayer. So by this point, Tommy has now entered the fold as Gene's right-hand man.
Well, Gene was producing him at first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They definitely have
but by this point, their
relationship is starting to flourish. Yeah,
definitely. So I just find that as an interesting little tick. It's like, this is one of the first songs that Tommy kind of gets Kiss recognition with,
and it's very meh.
I hate to sound like a broken record, but this is something that I noticed is true on this record as well. Is there's a lot of stuff where the verses sound really strong. It's like they've got an idea, they're cooking this idea, but when they get to the payoff, which is the chorus, the adage "Don't bore us, get to the chorus." Well, the chorus is the Boris on Kiss anymore. It's like their choruses are just really lame. There's just nothing interesting or exciting or grabbing me in any kind of way.
Same here. It's like there's a lot of killer bridges and killer pre-choruses all throughout this record, but then again, like you said, it just kind of falls flat once it gets to a chorus on like a good chunk of tracks on this album.
Or just out and out, just like saccharine kind of like artificiality, such as the next song, "Hide Your Heart."
This song, okay, so
it's an earworm.
I'll take the lead on this one because my first experience with this song was not from Bonnie Tyler, was not from Kiss, but from Ace Frehley's solo record.
Right.
So I already heard, because my mother was a huge Ace Frehley fan and followed him. She kind of ditched Kiss when Ace left and kind of followed him on the solo run.
We need to preface this by saying Ace recorded a version of this that came out at exactly the same time.
Yeah, that's what I was leading to. So with Ace recording one, I looked up the dates. The release dates between those two records were literally weeks apart. That was that close. Like they released their records close.
This song was recorded by no less than 4 other acts, all within the same time frame.
Yeah.
Bonnie Tyler, Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Yep.
It's a Heartbreak. Bonnie Tyler. She released a version a full year and a half prior to this album coming out. She released hers in the spring of 1988.
Oh wow!
And it did nothing. Molly Hatchet released their version. Yes, Molly Hatchet, Flirt with Disasters, recorded this song. It came out about a month before Kiss's version, and that's probably the first time I heard it, because I do remember them playing that on the radio and thinking, boy, that's weird. And then, of course, Ace's version came out roughly like a week after, I think. And then someone named Robin Beck recorded a version, and it came out in November. And it's alleged that the many different versions versions of this song kind of left it hiding in plain sight, so no one had a hit with it.
Yeah.
Right?
I counter it's because it's a goddamn terrible fucking song.
No, I already said I was going to take the lead on this one. You took the lead on the last one.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead.
So my first experience with this is the Ace version.
Right.
So my opinion on it is a little tainted because Ace's honestly does kind of have a harder edge to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's got better guitar solos. The production isn't much better, but it is slightly better. There's real sounding drums on it, for one. And Ace's delivery, like this song actually works for an Ace delivery. I think where this lands bad for a Kiss song, this is a weird song for Paul to sing. It's a song about it's a love triangle, essentially.
With Tito.
With Tito. He was king of the streets.
Tito Santana?
And Johnny.
Tito Jackson?
So
where did they come up with these names?
So it's a very weird song for Paul to sing, though, because he didn't really have that sort of life and background, even reading his book. But reading Ace's book and knowing his background with like the Ducky Boys and everything else, he kind of had a little bit more of that street lifestyle. So singing a song that's a little bit more street crime level feels a little bit more genuine for Ace. It just feels a lot more disingenuous for Paul, and I think that's why it fails so hard as a Kiss song.
Ace definitely had a friend named Tito.
I'm sure he did. So I think I do agree with the mass majority. I think there is a good song in there. Just Kiss did not deliver it.
It's a fine song. It's a fine 80s pop song.
You can't deny that every so often you will get stuck in your head. Hey, do.
That sounds like it could have been the theme for Pepsi.
I don't
the
give a
choice of a
shit.
next
It does sound like a
generation.
Pepsi commercial.
I don't give a
but
shit.
that's fine.
It's an earworm. You know what also could be in a Pepsi commercial? I'm about to make a lot of enemies right now.
Yeah, go for it.
I want you to want.
I mean,
No,
yeah,
I
that
disagree.
could totally.
I disagree.
That's
Totally
so.
disagree.
Sure,
that
it has been.
That absolutely could
Totally
be in
disagree.
any popular
But
commercial
I will-
about
I will-
wanting
you know
something.
What? But here's my thing. Be it as it may, we'll just for your sake of argument go with it. Okay. But part of what made this song so goddamn terrible right out of the chute was, and everyone called it when it came out, and neither of you are old enough to remember this, but this isn't 3 years past fucking Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer. It's the exact same goddamn song in a lot of ways. I mean, it's a different story, but it's still, you got, and Tommy used to work on the docks. Now you got Tito down on his. I don't
that's the Desmond Child thing.
I know it absolutely is.
That's why it sounds like
is
Living on a Prayer.
Is this Howie Knight or is this Diane Warren?
Holly Knight.
Okay, well, you know what? All of them should be ashamed. And I'll tell you something else that tells.
No, man, that's not that paycheck.
This is the most telling. There's no paycheck because no one had a hit with it because it sucks. Okay, it just sucks.
Look, I think there's way worse songs on this record.
There are. No, I don't actually.
No, there is.
Definitely.
Yeah, there is. There is.
Save the hate, man.
Okay,
Don't
you're
unload
right.
on this song,
I'm just saying,
man.
but here at the end of the day, this is very telling. It was this is vaulted as the lead single off the album, but it was a rejected song from Crazy Nights.
Yeah.
I don't know that it was even recorded for this demo. Might have, if this is the demo, this might even be just built off the demo.
This actually is one of the few demos that differ.
Ron Nevison probably made that call, and Ron Nevison was right. This is too much of a rewrite of something else that had already previously been popular. And this is where Kiss is really failing, is that they're flailing at air, they're swinging as hard as they can, and they're swiping every idea that's already in the air, but they're coming at it a year, 2 years after the fact. They're behind the curve. Kiss used to lead. Now, not only are they following, they're so far in the tail end of following that they're like a year, 2 years, in this case, copying that fucking terrible Bon Jovi song 3 fucking years too late. This is why this doesn't work. This is why nobody cares.
And Gene's just a prisoner of love.
And the next song is Prisoner of Love. Okay, I guess I'm talking too much.
I'm just saying, there's more songs, man.
I know, but I'm making a point is that overall, this whole album, the reason why all of this fails, and the reason that no one cares, is even more so illustrated when we get to the tour, and we'll explain why.
I know, that's why I'm like, save this for the end of the record.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're
Prisoner
good.
of Love.
We've got a lot of songs, man. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, this is not necessarily a good song, but compared to everything that has preceded it, it's an improvement.
One thing about this song that kind of speaks for the rest of the album too is that the bass playing is probably clearer on this album than probably like the rest of the Decade's albums.
Well,
at least in the Bruce Kulick era.
Let me clarify. When I say this is an improvement,
yeah,
that means it's like finding a peanut in the shit.
Like, oh, this would maybe be edible.
This might be edible,
but it's still covered.
But it's still covered in shit.
Oh, that got him. That got him.
That's awesome.
Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
Not really.
Honestly, the next handful of songs became forgettable or hated.
Right,
I don't know if the next one's forgettable necessarily.
That's what I'm getting at. I slipped a particular word in there, which was hated.
Read my body. Read my body.
I wanted to.
This song is. Wait. Let me just reiterate real fast.
I'm going to look up
the lyrics.
lyrics.
Please stop. Hang on. I just want to make sure we're very clear. This song is called Read My Body.
Yes.
We've given Gene so much shit about hot knife through butter, log in a fireplace. Then Paul comes out with this fucking song. Musically, lyrically, everything topples anything Gene ever did, in my opinion. Go right ahead, Cap. I know you're just itching.
I don't know.
Oh, I was just going to say, this might be the worst Kiss song we've covered so far.
Like, honestly, yes. Like, even with some of the other goofy Gene lyrics.
Well, let's put the X and sex was bad.
This is worse.
You Make Me Rock Hard is bad.
You're right. They are
this
very
operates
bad.
on that same level.
This to me escalates, though.
I have this in
my body. No! Shut the fuck up, Paul.
Are the letters big enough?
Yes, like what? What the fuck does that mean? Turn the page, get to
we know
the good
exactly
stuff.
what that means.
Well, yes, but it's like turn to the page, get to the good stuff.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Okay, what would that mean? Okay, we get it as the letter big enough, D, her. Okay, but turn the page, get to the good stuff? What page are we turning?
Came out already at this point.
like my love pump.
I don't know. For some reason, this one just struck a chord with me harder than any of the Goofy Gene songs did.
Okay, well, Goofy, let's keep going.
I was going to say, if the Hide My Heart is Living on a Prayer, then this was their attempt at being fucking Cherry Pie.
I don't know, was Cherry Pie out at that point?
If not, pretty damn close.
This was 19. We finally crossed into the 90s. This is 1990.
No, it isn't. It's 89.
I thought the record the tour was in 90.
The tour was in 90. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
This record came out in October of 89.
Read all
and most of this was already existing demos, like we said.
Shut the fuck up, Cap.
Like we said, this album is all existing demos, so who knows how old some of these ideas are. Love is a Slap in the Face.
Okay. This song I really liked up until, like we've mentioned before, up to the chorus. It's a solid tune up until then, I think.
There's an interesting thing about it. The chorus is almost an earworm for me, but, and this is what is very confusing for me, I remember hearing long ago, and I was even like preaching this to Cap, but like looking it up, I can't find any info on it. I heard that Eric Carr didn't even really play on this record, and that was basically a drum machine, which led into basically polished up demos, and this is what the record became. And the reason I even really feel that might be the case is a song like this. The drums don't make any sort of note that you're leading into the chorus, like a cymbal crash,
no fills,
anything. It feels so robotic that's honestly like going to Kiss Conspiracy World. Even though no one's really wanting to admit to it, I don't know. I think there might be some weight to that.
It's been documented that Eric and Paul were not getting along in this era.
Yeah.
And it's also speculated that that it's Eric Singer that did the drum overdubs. I've only seen that suggested. I have seen no proof of that whatsoever. Right. But Eric Singer, of course, he's already working with Paul, being part of Paul's solo band. He's, have drums will travel guy. You know, he's not, he's a free agent if he's available. That's a possibility.
But I think that's honestly what makes this song suffer is the drums are more dynamic.
What makes this song suffer is that it sucks. Well, this song is a slap in the face. This album is a slap in the face. Although the existence of this band at this point is a slap in the face. Why can they not just go away? There's and again, and I keep referencing Spinal Tap, but anyone that has the old Spinal Tap LP has the Rocklopedia Britannica thing or whatever inside, and it says that Spinal Tap continues to fill a much needed void, and Kiss at this point are filling a much needed void. But it's just why I just listen to some of this stuff and just go why. And let me stop here and qualify something, because this is important, and this is probably where I have to disqualify myself to a certain extent, because at this point in the game, I'm 89. I was 17 years old. And I was getting into the punk rock thing real heavy at this point. I had gotten so disillusioned by all this hair metal, cock rock bullshit. And then I had no real frame of reference for stuff. I didn't know the history of things till I heard this band Danzig. And Danzig's record was such a antithesis of the hair metal thing. It was a deep voiced manly singer
dry
instead
production.
of the super bone dry production. All of it, had a great appeal to me. And then of course it was like, well, if you
weird lyrics.
Yeah. And then it was like, well, if you like Danzig, you might like the Misfits, and that opened the door and I started exploring this new channel of just everything, where the music felt a lot more honest, a lot more immediate. It had a lot more energy, drive. It spoke to me, especially at that age, more so than a song like Love Is a Slap in the Face. Okay, you understand? So it was hard for me to even relate to where this band was even at or coming from anymore. And I looked at it from a cynical perspective, the same way I looked at the hair metal bands. It was like, even though I was only 17, I still saw it as a pose. I saw it, I was like, dude, you're middle-aged men, and it's like, you can still find your way into rock and roll, I think, even at middle-aged and beyond.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're going to do it by doing these sneering, sleazo kind of, I'm a macho guy. It's like, no, we know you better than that now. The charade is over.
Okay, fine. How about a song like Forever?
Then Forever, well, that's why I say, okay, let's go to Forever.
Well, before we get to that, I want to make mention that the co-write on that one makes an appearance on a lot of tracks on this album.
You're right.
And some of my the tracks that I like better than the rest were all co-written by Vinnie Poncia.
Yeah.
From the Dynasty sessions.
That's a good point. We should mention that, because it seemed like I read somewhere that at some point, we talked that he had to settle. He threatened to sue. He audited the books or whatever. Yep. But I think that there, for a moment, there was a consideration of having him brought in to produce, which didn't happen. Clearly. But it's interesting.
But he's got 1, 2, 3, 4... five co-writes on this album.
And I wonder if any of this is just because this is stuff that goes back that far.
I wonder.
I kind of hear it, though, on some songs like that we'll talk about later on.
Yeah.
Well, Forever is co-written with Michael Bolton.
Co-written, Russ. Co-written. Paul wants you to make very certain that it is co-written by Michael Bolton.
Oh, because he's got a heart on
co-written.
Michael Bolton claims to write it, I guess, when he plays live. Yeah. Whatever.
Co-written.
Who cares?
You know what?
I can't write a song like Forever.
You know what? If I were Paul, I'd be like, you're goddamn right he wrote that piece of shit. But he ain't, because Paul's stupid. But you know what? Let's just be honest here. This is totally in Paul's wheelhouse. It's syrupy. It's cinnamonal. It's just
an 80s.
It's a teenage girl's note passed under a desk lamenting the unrequited love for the captain of the football team. And it's precisely the level that this works at. And that's not a put down.
See,
what it is, it works.
Yeah.
Now, you know,
It charts.
It proves to be their biggest hit. Like we said, Michael Bolton co-wrote this, and Bolton, of course, was the lead singer of Blackjack, which featured Bruce Kulick on lead guitar. So it's not like it's outside of the circle, so to speak. So I don't know. Can we get a shout out for the class of 1990? Because I'm sure this played at every fucking high school prom that year.
Oh yeah, and I don't know. I feel like this song. I found what was interesting. Again, much like you, Russ, I've listened to it before, but not willingly in years. But forever will get thrown on like compilation records, or it'll get thrown in like a Spotify playlist mix and just like skip. Just little things like that. They always use the single version. I didn't realize just how much work they did on the single version versus the album version.
Okay, well, I didn't know that there was two versions. I don't think I caught any of that.
Yeah,
I didn't either.
The single version is a lot more warm. The acoustics are a lot more pronounced. It doesn't kind of have that overall thinness that this record does. It felt like someone took that demo and went, okay, we're going to give this a proper master job now.
Well, I think it's because they probably saw its appeal as being a single. So they probably showed this a lot more care and concern.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't think it works good with the production it gave. Although I will say, in a couple episodes when we hit a live 3, I think this works really well live. It's a good live song.
When they play it straight up acoustically, it's fine. Again, when I think of this song,
I saw this tour and I don't remember them playing it. They may well have, but we'll get to that.
Yeah,
we'll get to
interesting.
There's but it was, yes, this would be the second single, and it was very, very important, and we'll get to the reason why this song was so very important to them on the grand scheme of things here in a minute.
Almost halfway there.
Let's keep going here. Silver Spoon.
Another Poncia co-write. And it's weird. Like, I hear the Poncia influence just from listening to Unmasked and Dynasty so much more so than like the pre-choruses of all these songs.
Well, the only thing interesting here to me was the backing vocals. But given the time it was made, I'd say this whole thing was copped from Great White's cover of the Ian Hunter song "Once Bitten, Twice Shy."
You hear that in it? Huh.
I don't, not directly, but just the vibe of it. That just the whole.
That kind of shuffly kind of.
Well, it's just like it just. That's the first thing that came to my mind. And I don't know that was necessarily the influence, but I wouldn't be at all surprised seeing that they're just swinging at air and coming up with any idea. Oh, that was a big hit. And of course, even for Great White, their version of that song wasn't near as good as Ian Hunter's original version.
Well, you can't
and
beat
there's
Ian
people
Hunter.
that have never ever heard the Ian Hunter version, which is kind of like ludicrous to me. But
me too. I know we're like a
but I'm just saying. I mean, Ian Hunter's version's got Mick Ronson playing lead guitar.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a badass tune, and you hear the Great White version, and it's just like totally soulless and vapid, and you're like,
got wah pedals and shit.
It's just not the same thing. And this song is too, even with the soul singing background vocal.
The lift in the chorus always is what got me immediately going like, oh, what the fuck was that?
I don't know. There's something about this. Just you know who would have probably been able to make pretty good work of this song had he been around? Peter.
With that chorus too.
I think it just would have suited that better. So, but even then, I don't know if this still rings that close to a classic Kiss kind of vibe or not.
I don't think it does.
But it's the most. To me, it was one of the more unique things on this album.
I'm sorry, I'm just still stuck on Read My Body because for a second I forgot which one Silver Spoon was. So I had to listen to it for a second. I was like, oh yeah, I remember which one. And then I was like, wait, what song starts with that really weird
No, that's Read My Body.
Yeah, that's fucking Read My Body too. I forgot. It's got that stupid ass music in it, and Paul's half-ass rapping in the song. I'm still stuck on that fucking song. That is the word. I'm sorry, Lick It Up. I am so sorry. I have given Lick It Up so much shit saying that it's my least favorite Kiss song. You know what? I will listen to Lick It Up on repeat instead of listening to this song ever again.
I would listen to Lick It Up on repeat and listen to this whole album because Cadillac Dreams dreams. Here's my
Cadillac Dreams.
notes.
Go
Here's
ahead.
my notes. Unremarkable. Listen to this and immediately forgot it. Like when I
This
was
one-
starting to write the notes, I was like, I couldn't even hum it again.
No, I couldn't either. It just sucks.
And it was just
It
like,
flat out
what,
sucks.
this is a Gene song, right?
Yeah, this is like a Gene wanting to be Donald Trump song.
Yeah.
It's talking about spending all his money and look how rich he is, yada yada yada. It's just like
whatever.
It's definitely an odd lyrical choice and not a great
sounds weird,
it
too.
It just has nothing to it. It's like all of these songs seem to lack any kind of. If you're going back to basics and you're going to do a hard rock album, it helps to rock out a little bit. And these songs just seem like they're just kind of like.
I wonder if we have the
there.
same thoughts on the next song.
King of Hearts.
I don't know. I kind of like this one just because it seems like, song from the songwriting perspective, it seems more put together in a more decent way than the rest of them.
I kind of mimic that. It feels like this is the only song outside of maybe Hide Your Heart that, because again, they didn't even write that one, but this is the first one that really kind of feels like there may have been a kernel of something starting, but again, they kind of start something and not finish it. I don't know. Just for some reason, this song to me just felt like it had the most potential.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'd agree with that.
See, I've got. What am I supposed to like about this? This is a very long album full of needless filler material, and that's what this is. All
I have a
feels
feeling
like
your
filler
notes are
material.
getting shorter as the
Well,
tracks go
I
on.
said, it's quantity over quality at this point. It's like I think they feel like they're giving you a bargain by giving you all this extra material, but guess what? I mean, what? We still got like 5 more songs to go on this fucking piece of shit.
I think this song is fine. I mean,
Yeah,
arrangement wise, it does it for me.
I can't even remember any of this.
I listened to it like twice yesterday. I knew I was going to forget if I only listened to it once.
I was cramming a lot today to make sure the wrists were still.
There's people that love this album, and I can't
I
understand.
know
why.
we're making so many people mad
I
right
don't
now.
care because they got bad taste.
Taste is subjective.
No,
Russ.
it isn't. No, it isn't. I reject that argument. Quality endures. Quality will always stand.
I'm gonna start using that now. No, I reject that argument.
Yes.
That's to quote Gene. That's a very powerful and attractive statement.
There's a reason why this shit gets forgotten and lost over time. If it were a good album, it would still have some sort of enduring quality that you'd be able to recognize.
Well, Russ,
but none of
sometimes the
this
street
does.
giveth and the street taketh
What
away.
the fuck
Yeah,
is
this one sucks too.
Is this supposed to be some sort of epic? Because it's epically awful. I mean, there's a point where it's just like I have to. It's like I'm listening to it, and I keep hoping, and I swear to God, I'm not lying here. I keep hoping that there's going to be some lost jewel of a song that I'm going to unearth in this. Like, going to be like
music
that,
tastes change as we get
right.
older.
And I
maybe
would be like, why did I
time.
miss this one? How did I sleep on that?
Yeah.
And it has not showed up yet on this album. And I keep hoping that, like, that was my big thing about this record. I'm like, I've never listened to it. I'm hoping that there's something in there where I'd be like, well, goddamn, I didn't even know they did that because I just overlooked it. Nope, not there. I wanted to. I really, really sincerely wanted to. Keep this moving, I guess. You Love Me to Hate You.
This one's the vocals they used on this were really weird.
Yeah, but this is hot on the heels of a Joan Jett having a song that was similarly titled, itself a co-write with Desmond Child, which feels like, again, it's reaching. And even if they're not, they are, because it's like, really? This is what you're... Did you not catch that Joan Jett just had a mega hit song called I Hate Myself for Loving You, and now you're going to release a song called You Love Me to Hate You, and me not go... connect the dots here.
Yeah, because I
this
didn't
kind of
realize it
shit's
was that
insulting.
close.
This insults me when even as a kid. It's like I think average fans probably saw this as what it was.
Damn, is this just Desmond Child being lazy too?
And it's nowhere near as good as the Joan Jett song.
Yeah, cocaine.
I don't know what his habits were. Do y'all have anything to contribute to that?
I mean, for this song,
I've honestly forgotten what this one sounded like.
Yeah, I just remember it having really weird like vocal harmonies. Like they kind of do this like little slow sway kind of
I remember
harmony.
now. Yeah,
that-
no, I have anything to say to this song.
Well, and to your point, you just made this point. I'm going to drive it home for you. Somewhere between heaven and hell, and I wrote, it's getting harder and harder to even write anything. These songs are just so bland.
I know
I
the
think
chorus
this
of this just like boring.
Well, I don't know. I do not like this song. preface it that. But I think this is the only time we have a reversal. They threw down the Uno switch card. I think this is the only time the chorus is better than their verses. Every so often, that chorus will get stuck in my head. That somewhere between heaven and hell. It's just the melody's cool, and Gene kind of like talks the rest of it. It's a little different. And I don't know, there feels like that was a moment where they were like, this is a genuine idea and not just, oh, we need something. So I feel like they threw down their Uno reversal card where the verses suck, but then the chorus was like, oh, okay, well, this is a little better.
Right, I got you.
But that's all I have on that. I still don't like the song, but in a sifting through the pile of garbage, this is at least one piece of newspaper that didn't have as much Dookie on it.
I'm going to address that in a minute once we summarize all this.
Yeah.
The next song is a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah.
'Cause we got a little surprise for you tonight. We're going to hand the microphone over to Eric Carr.
He may or may not have played drums, baby, but
Little Caesar. I'm going to say this is the best song on the album.
Honestly, yeah.
It's
I really
up there.
think it is. I really
Riff
think
wise, and Eric always has a cool voice.
I wrote that. I said his vocal has more character and should have been given much more room to shine.
yeah.
And it gives these songs. It's. I think that's part of what gives it its anomalous feel is because his vocal is so, kind of not soulful, but just throaty, and tough, for lack of a better word. Whereas Paul's like, he's got more. It's just got a better vocal. Sorry, Eric Carr was a better vocalist than Paul Stanley. There, I said it. That's good. There, we'll draw heat because by this point, Paul's doing his throaty fucking helium shit. I never liked it. We've talked about this in the past. I liked his '70s vocals, which sounded much more like what Eric Carr's doing here. It's not that
And Eric almost kind of has a similar tonality to Gene.
Yeah, I mean he's got his own thing.
He does,
and which it gives him character and identity in a band that's like dying for character and identity, and they're squashing this guy every chance they get. And here they've got the best song on the album, sung by the best vocalist in the band, arguably. Or at least it's just, and maybe it's not that he's better, it's just that we never got to hear it enough.
Yeah.
And this isn't a bad song. This is actually, out of everything on the album, this song seemed to have its own identity and own character. And even though I don't think it's a great song per se, I just remember listening to it, the other night going, well, finally, this is as close as I was going to get to that hidden gem.
I will
didn't
say
know that it existed.
In demo form, it's better because in demo it's not called Little Caesar. It's called Ain't That Particular.
I've heard the story.
It works in the same kind of Ain't That Particular, the Little Caesar. And it was different lyrics and stuff, but it kind of worked better especially since that was probably the original idea. I don't know that.
Well, I could see where they would drop that. There was a song called "Ain't That Peculiar," which
that's what I was thinking too. Yes,
but either they're gonna be worried about that, but they have "You Love Me to Hate You."
Exactly.
Shut the fuck up.
I know. I don't disagree. Final track is "Boomerang."
Yeah, this one's just like your standard 80s
This is
shredder.
No part 2.
Exactly.
Yeah, but for me, that makes it the second best track on this album.
Really?
Yeah.
I do not like this song at all.
And I think it's only because even though it's probably kind of forced, it has an energy to it just from that speed. But it's absolutely No part 2. It's not as good as No, which I thought was a good song. That's my favorite track on Crazy Nights. And and I think that's probably the frustrating part about this is that they're going for that, but they're not achieving it. And there's nothing worse than hearing like some of these songs where they're trying to write something and they're not achieving what they're going for.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, you've rooted for your team and they're playing their best, but they're not really playing their best. You've
seen a lot of half-assed tracks, but I will give Bruce Kulick and the guitar sounds in this album a lot of credit because this is probably like the most, I guess, tight. This is the tightest Bruce has sounded on record, in my opinion, compared to the rest of them.
Oh, I think it's also that this is in the transition phase of the 80s and that kind of high gloss, chorused and crunch or whatever stuff is kind of going out of vogue, and you're seeing more of a return to a
big thick guitar style.
What do they call it? A organic kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I find this interesting too. This is also because actually listening to these records a lot more, I've started noticing the slow progression of their writing habits with like lyrics and like things they write about. As I made mention of, like, this seems to be the beginning of Paul writing about his conquering the world lyrics and stuff like that. As again, for me as a Kiss fan, I kind of stopped around, Creatures of the Night, skimmed a little bit of the 80s, and then paid attention to Revenge Onward. And by Revenge Onward, everyone kind of had adopted that new writing style, so it just felt very, black and white. This is the first time Gene actually writes a song about a woman being in power and him not being the one in control.
Yeah.
Which I find interesting, because especially with this lyric, first you're cold, then you're hot, you're in the mood, and then you're not. Yeah, I know I'll get a bang because you're like a boomerang. But I find that interesting, where it's like he's admitting to the whole thing of like, yeah, you'll be hot, you'll eventually come back, but I'm having to deal with your ass. That's kind of the whole vibe of it the whole time. I'm going to throw down the dice on a roll. It's a showdown. I'm going to walk on hot coals, cut the deck, place your bet because the game ain't over yet. He's fighting with someone. It's not the thing of he's in power anymore. And I thought that was kind of an interesting move.
Yeah, not another one of those, here's my dick, worship it, bitch.
Yeah, but basically, I have a formidable opponent and I'm dealing with it.
It's like, Shannon.
I know, I wonder if it's about Shannon. That's kind of fucked up.
Hey, somebody was going to put the demon in his place. So this is 15 songs and an hour long, and none of it needs to exist. And like I said, I was hoping to find the lost gem, but it isn't there. And I think you got to look, and again, at the time, you see this sort of revitalization of a no-nonsense approach to rock and roll that's happening genre-wide with groups like spearheaded by Guns N' Roses.
I was going to say.
And on coming from the other end, Metallica. Very much a dressed down thing. It's become less about the fashion. It's more t-shirt and jeans kind of approach. This would also, of course, be capitalized to a much greater degree and expanded upon by the so-called grunge movement in another, about 18 months after this. So we're seeing the advent of this, But following suit, I guess this is their effort to return to a straightforward hard rock style, as opposed to the poppier edge that Crazy Nights had. However, I think where this fails overall as an album is the very fact that there isn't any of their signature pop hooks. We've talked about Kiss being a pop band at core in the past. The two greatest influences on Kiss, and classic Kiss in particular, would be 60s pop and 60s R&B.
Yeah. And
they can meld those so well in the past, and here they're just struggling. They don't do any of it. And then so instead they've eschewed it all for just that, it's like we talked, they had that sort of self-assured swagger back in the day, and that's just gone for all this sort of clumsy kind of chest-thumping macho bravado thing. And if not lyrically, musically, it's like they're trying to write these big heavy riffs, but they're just not interesting. There's nothing catchy or
and
clever
honestly,
about
for
any
me,
of it.
I think part of the reason being is, and we kind of touch on this a little bit each episode, but never really dig into it. This is the first album cover that is so lazy.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you anything about the music. It doesn't give you any sort of vibe. Yeah, I hate using that word, but it's correct. It doesn't give you anything to work on.
To be fair, Asylum wasn't a good cover either.
It wasn't, but it still gave you an idea of what you're getting. You're getting a neon pop, crazy, 80s Kiss. You don't get anything off this album cover. A Sphinx with
sunglasses,
photoshopped sunglasses. I mean, this isn't weird Egyptian music. This isn't even beach music. This doesn't give you any sort of vibe for anything. Even Crazy Nights, that weird mirror cover. It's like, even though, what's that supposed to say? It is still of the time. It was an 80s-esque looking cover. This doesn't fit in any era. You don't look at this and go, "Oh, that's a '90s cover. That's an '80s." That's a cool callback cover.
And it's interesting because you can come up with an idea that's timeless, and then you can come up with an idea that's just clueless.
I feel this is a clueless one.
Yeah.
and, you know, I agree. They're probably,
And I think that didn't
one of the
help.
worst
I
albums-
don't think it
album
helped
covers.
record sales.
well, it was released in October of '89, and it peaks at 29 on the Billboard charts on the last week of November, and is certified gold in December, and then basically disappears, which is interesting because we have 3 singles. They've made videos for all of them. The first one was "Hide Your Heart," which takes place, if I remember right, on the roof of a building, and I guess the kid throws himself off the roof of the building.
He gets shot.
He gets shot. I couldn't remember.
Okay, so all right, nerd time. There's 2 edits of the video. There was the initial video that got sent off to promotion agencies, what you can find on like in a couple years when they release like Exposed or whatever it is, or Extreme Close Up. That's what. That version's on there, but then there's an MTV edit where they couldn't show the gun as much. There was actual like prosthetics of like a bullet coming out of a chest kind of thing, like a boom kind of look. Yeah. They had to kind of cut around that. So if you remember a version where it just seemed like he kind of fell backwards off a roof, that's not a weird just memory. That's probably an MTV edit where they just got rid of it.
I remember there was a shot or whatever. All I remember was that took place on the top of a roof or something. The guy falls off, and at the end they close the ambulance, and the guy that closes the ambulance doors turns, and it's the Gene Simmons with his sinister look on his face.
Is it sinister? Is it calling back to the? Honestly,
watching
it again.
No. What it is really is comical.
Yeah.
When I watched it
and
again,
it's meant to be comical.
When I watched it again, it almost felt like a callback to the World Without Heroes pose, like when the demon was shedding a tear at the end.
Because doesn't he make some look with his eyes?
Yeah, he kind of does like a little bit of like that sad, like, you see what happens when you do drugs.
My memory was that he did like, he kind of like a raised out, like, ha ha ha, I'm the driver.
Oh, no. He kind of like shut the door and he kind of had like a solemn look on his face.
I don't remember it that way. I remember it as like a ha 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 ha.
Oh, no, it was more of like a, you see, kids, don't do drugs, don't play with guns. It was more of a fatherly, like, you see what's happened. But again,
now watch me strut my shit.
He gets in the ambulance. The part we didn't see is, all right, kid, I'm Gene Simmons of Kiss.
Who?
And I want you to know that for $3,500, I can drive you straight to the hospital. However, for $5,000, I could drive you to the hospital and sign your cast. I don't know.
Are you like Bon Jovi?
I think was Forever the second single.
I believe so, yeah.
This proves to be the elusive hit that the band needed, but it does little to help album sales. But, as I said, we were going to talk about, this song was very important because it gives the band the ability to tour, because as they were going into the tour cycle for this, they realized there was no reception from the promoters whatsoever. And it's interesting to note, this album comes out in October, but they don't go on tour until the following spring, a full 6 months later.
Oh, wow.
7 months later, 8 months later. So, I mean, it's a long fucking time. It's not within a normal cycle. Usually they're on the road by the time the album's out.
Mm-hmm. They're already playing a few dates.
Yeah, and there's no demand for Kiss whatsoever. This changes that. This single brings promoters to the table.
But does it though?
Oh, absolutely it does.
What about March 11th, 1990? Do you have anything for that?
Hang on. Yeah, they played in Galveston for that was filmed for a Exposed Part 2, which never happens.
Well, so for the whole
Isn't this the show where everyone's throwing shit at them?
This is the show that they play for a beach volleyball tournament. I've got the flyer right here. And this is the reason. And this
is like a radio tie-in too, right?
And this is the reason I ask: did they have that resurgence or the ability to tour? Because we look at this flyer on Saturday, they have all the different stuff. On Sunday, right there, Kiss in tiny words. Kiss Right next to Tug of War, Hottest Tan and Swimsuit Contest, and more. They are the same.
I told him once. I told him 1,000 times.
It's puppet. It's Spinal Tap, then Puppet Show.
Puppet Show.
This is what I'm saying. Kiss.
Well, I think
Kiss
that,
is the main event on a Sunday,
I think,
on a beach event with Tug of War and the Hottest Tan and Swimsuit Contest.
Hey, look, I'm just
Gig's
telling
a gig,
you,
man.
Right, but that was probably booked well in advance of this tour. So
yeah, I don't know. I just seeing it just strikes me weird looking at this and just seeing Kiss in not their font. And
right.
the exact same size
who
as
else,
the other
who else
events.
played this thing? It was a 2-day thing. Who else was on the bill? Nobody I've ever heard of. Okay, well, wonderful.
Yeah, that's why I was very confused on this.
That is kind of bizarre. But then again,
not even
where we talked about this. I mean, everything was kind of failing. I think that this surprise hit for Forever really kind of helped salvage themselves going into the 90s.
And then their third single.
The third single and video is for the song Rise to It, which of course has the lengthy intro where they're sitting backstage applying makeup. It's a flashback sequence.
Yeah.
To 76, I think they were trying to say 75.
It's really kind of irrelevant. A lot of people make a lot about this because they're wearing costumes.
I make a lot about this, Russ.
Because the costumes weren't period correct.
No, they're not. Because when you look at the period costumes, they basically were using a mixed match of Creatures of the Night and Dynasty / Unmasked costumes.
Yeah, but I mean, that was, I think
all I had left.
That was, yeah, I think it was probably difficult to secure some of this stuff out of.
Well, from what I believe, around the same time period, with all their financial problems, I think Bill Aucoin was starting to get rid of some of those quote-unquote Kiss warehouses.
I don't think he was getting rid of them. I think he wasn't paying rent, and they probably got auctioned off.
And a lot of that memorabilia started ending up in fans' hands.
It also probably had something to do with relative fit and stuff, because even I remember, what I remember most about that is the chest piece on Gene's
is broken.
Thing is like separated because I think he just can't close it all the way. I think he's just gotten so fat, which is not a put down. I mean, that's what happens. You get old, you know. I'm sitting here clutching my gut, so I mean, I'm just as guilty, you know.
I just want to see the Kiss Fan Storage Wars episode with all that shit.
But yeah, so around that time period, the Kiss warehouses were getting liquidated. Bill Aucoin was actually starting to start to catalog some of the stuff he had and started selling it on the bootleg market, which became a lot more evident in a few years, which we'll get into. But yeah, so I want to say that around this time, part of the reason why they weren't even able to get any sort of old costumes is this is just all they even had left in their warehouse, because if you notice, this was one of those aha moments that just made me really smile. The cod piece that they showed off in Kiss Exposed is the exact one he wore in that music video. And that's what made me go, aha, this might be all they had left.
You know what? I'm having an aha moment is that we're sitting here getting nerdy about a cod piece.
I know, right?
Gotta love it.
Okay.
But,
but I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
I
but again, very interesting. To pull back to the big picture, though, Kiss. Well, Gene and Paul.
Certainly not the cod piece.
Gene and Paul reapplying makeup for the first time in over 15 years? Close to like 10?
No. This was 89, the last makeup show.
Okay,
was
so about 10
82,
years.
So it hadn't. It feels like a long time, but it really hadn't been a long time. It had only been about 7 years.
But the rumor had it was that they had gotten a handful of offers for makeup shows.
Okay, this was Larry Mazur's idea to do the makeup thing, and I don't know that he was doing it so much to test the waters. I think he was just trying to use trying to connect the current fan base, or a fan base that they are still literally trying to build, and kind of give them a reminder. This is that band. In case you forgot. Like anyone forgot, but no one because forgot. Like I said, everyone a year before, like, got their mind blown by that exposed video, by the makeup stuff on the exposed video.
And there's something very telling too, because again, there's a lot of video footage around this time, because again, personal camcorders are becoming a lot more affordable, so they had a lot more people, and MTV was booming, so and Kiss was really starting to actually kind of get in favor with MTV for a minute. Like, they were starting to get a little bit of rotation. Like, of all the negatives we keep talking about, the one positive is Kiss is actually starting to make a little bit of inroads, and they're doing I Want My MTV promos, things like that.
MTV cannot be understated. I think for people that don't know, that didn't live through that, and MTV was a huge part of the whole Americana culture of the era. I mean, you got your MTV really directed the music era, the music of that era. If you didn't have a hit video or whatever, you're probably not going to have a hit on radio. It really fed radio programming.
Oh yeah, but I think MTV did like a little 6-minute behind the scenes of the making of Rise to It, because they sometimes put those like in the middle of
what's interesting
episodes.
Though is that according to Mazer, like this video was not successful.
No,
and
it wasn't.
And to him, this signaled that the new fan base that they were building had no interest in the makeup era, right?
Well, so this was the interesting thing, though, because it's to lead back what you said about, trying to bridge and, build up that fan base and connect it. It'll be like, this is the old band. There's something very telling in that little 6-minute behind-the-scenes thing, because they were interviewing Gene and Paul in the makeup, of course. And Paul was leading into his, dissertations of, big analogies and all this. But at the very end, he goes, and when I embarked on my solo tour, something I noticed immediately was the reception to some of the old songs. And as soon as he finished the sentence, again, watching these guys for years, you kind of pick up on their little ticks. He looks down and takes a breath, in which he really, you could tell it ate him up saying that. He said the best response he got was over the old songs. And you could tell it ate him up having to say that, sitting in the makeup. It's such an interesting thing for Paul, because we know how invested he is, at least
in the contemporary.
But now he's sitting there in makeup having to say the old songs
is
got the best
people wanted to see. That goes to show no one cared. And the fact that this album, I mean, it goes gold, but it doesn't even go platinum. And that's even with a top 10 single. And like I said, there was a lot of reluctance for touring. It had the Forever single not been a hit, they wouldn't have toured on this album.
No.
We talked about this in the previous episode. They almost didn't tour for Crazy Nights. And they saw that the prospects were, if they were going to tour, the likelihood was they were going to either A, open for another arena act, or B, headline their own club tour.
Yeah. Which is what Paul booked for himself.
And again, but that
could have been the reality.
It would be easier for him to go book a club headlining show for himself, and he could justify that as a restructured thing. But for Kiss to go do that, they just would not see that. They did get a one-off reunion offer from a promoter named John Shear to do a pay-per-view of the original band in full makeup, which Larry Mazer shot down out of hand, because he saw that as a death knell. He's like, that's a card you're going to play for a farewell. I'm not managing a band that's doing their farewell. I'm here to rebuild, rebrand, and reestablish this band. And he knows he's probably looking at an uphill battle. He played the card in the video and he saw that it didn't work. What he didn't expect or realize is that for the rest of his tenure in the band, he is going to be barraged constantly
because they opened it up
with, when's the original band getting back together?
They allowed the crack. They opened the door, and that was the problem. And what was also interesting is I also didn't realize how much of Paul's solo tour kind of influenced everything else that's going to happen in Kiss.
Well, I think that, like you said, I think a big part of that was realizing that classic material was still very much, sought after.
Because that beach gig they played, one song was a new one.
Oh, okay.
That set list was Detroit Rock City, Calling Dr. Love, Shout It Out Loud, Love Gun, Forever.
Of course.
Rock and Roll All Night, Cold Gin.
Well, even the tour itself didn't have that many new songs.
No, but even before they even get into the tour, just this one-off show, they've already ditched all the 80s material in favor of a lot of classics. And I think that was a pull from what, again, Paul was saying. He's like, wow, the old shit got the best reception. I guess we'll just give them what they want.
Well, I mean, which they should have been doing all along, but whatever. So this tour gets set up. And interestingly, it goes from having no prospects of a tour to them putting together probably the largest stage production that they have had since the Dynasty tour.
Yeah, with the Sphinx.
With the Sphinx. And the Sphinx served as a backdrop instead of the customary KISS logo, which, of course, the mouth opened on the Sphinx at the beginning to reveal the band backlit by lasers and fog. Very rock and roll, right? Very metal.
I will say, stupid album cover, but as a stage, it weirdly works.
Yeah, as a stage, it's okay. They dropped the "You Wanted the Best, You Got the Best" opening that they had used forever and a day, and they also dropped initially all of the individual solo spots in the show. There would be no, most notably, a drum solo, which of course really upset Eric Carr. This would change pretty.
Not
quite halfway to the tour, but
it not only changed, but they incorporated his drum solo into the show.
Yeah,
and made it like part of the like Sphinx, and like he had like these drum pads set up, and he'd like hit different things, and it'd be like
he would play a song basically. But all this is at the direction of Larry Mazer, who feels, and perhaps rightly so, again, it helps update the image of the band. The opening act for the entire run is a band called Slaughter, who, interestingly enough, are essentially the Vinnie Vincent Invasion minus Vinnie Vincent.
Yeah,
and they've had like a couple of big hits off of their debut album.
And that's kind of messed up, where you had a former member of KISS in your band, you get rid of him and then get more successful.
Well, hey,
or opening up for his former band,
and those guys were big for a nanosecond.
I mean, success is relative, but still, they did something after Vinny left.
And they were probably
to the Angels, man.
And to be fair, they were probably a big part of helping this tour be as successful as it was. This isn't a runaway success for them, but it's a successful tour, especially compared to the previous one. You know who else was offered an opening spot on this?
Black and Blue.
Ace Frehley.
I was about to ask if we were going to bring up Ace during this time period.
Ace was offered to open the run, and the idea was, you open the show, and then when KISS closes, you come out and do the encore with them.
Yeah.
Rock and Roll All Night. And interestingly, Ace says, nah, nope, not interested.
Probably couldn't.
Now, as if they hadn't already stoked, whether by design or not, the idea of a reunion, this kind of really shows that it's not, the time is not right.
No. And one extra thing to note before they even fully kick off the tour, after that beach event on April 25th in 1990, they do a small little promo event for another radio station, doing a lot of radio station help.
I was gonna get to that. Right
okay,
now.
I didn't know.
No, you're right on point here. This is where I am at. You mentioned the March 11th show in Galveston. Then they did the benefit for a promoter's daughter in Asbury Park, New Jersey, at the Stone Pony, which is a legendary club. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's the one and only time they played Little Caesar.
Well, it's also interesting that this gig, from what I've gathered, is an unrehearsed gig. Like, they all just showed up, never having rehearsed it, played it, and then they all went their separate ways.
And like, this is
that's kind of cool, though.
And again, we don't need to do this for every show, but
was that
very
the show, or was it the one at the country club in California, Reseda?
For what?
There's a third show they did as a radio promotion on April 25th. Was that?
Yeah, sure? That's what I'm talking about, the April 25th.
Okay, that's the show they played Little Caesar?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm talking about the week before they played at the Stone Pony in Asbury Park. So these three shows, I think, are completely unrelated to the tour cycle.
They are. And
have nothing to do with anything other than that they were probably things they agreed to probably months in advance.
Yeah.
And that's probably why you don't see a whole lot of, surviving with, what's the word? Ephemera.
Yeah.
Other than that flyer you just busted out, which I wish the people could see, was like...
It's on the KISS FAQ website.
I've never seen that. Yeah, okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, that KISS FAQ site...
is really good,
really
especially when it comes
if you're
to
into
the
some
tour
of the stuff, get on there.
But again, we don't need to do this for every show, but the Country Club show, the April 25th one, that set list is very interesting. Like, they didn't do the all classics. Like, this feels like this should have been the ongoing set for the way Hot in the Shade would have ran. I Stole Your Love, Deuce, Heaven's on Fire, Rise to It, Crazy Crazy Nights, Strutter, Calling Dr. Love, Hide Your Heart, Betrayed, Black Diamond, Shout It Out Loud, Little Caesar, Come On and Love Me, Cold Gin, Forever, Under the Gun.
Did they? Now, Come On and Love Me didn't make it through the tour, did it?
It did not.
That's a shame.
So again, a lot of interesting choices on this single show. That's just like seems like that would have been the set list.
Yeah. Well, maybe at that point, I'm sure they were planning for the tour, so they had to have been probably trying some of that stuff out. The tour starts on May 3rd in Lubbock, Texas. And my memory is that MTV got really behind this.
Yeah, there's a lot of clips on...
They did a lot of stuff. They did a whole episode of this show, Headbangers Ball, which was their Saturday night 3-hour heavy metal show. And it was all built around the start of this tour.
Yep, and Kiss's crew was following them around, recording that process, in which I was bringing up that they were trying to do an exposed number 2, which I'm trying to figure out what the concept of it would have been. It seems like it just would have been a tour diary.
Yeah,
it wouldn't have. It seems to have only shared the name of the previous video just so they could have a part 2, but it wasn't going to share.
That could have even just been a working title. They may have never even intended for it to be called.
It could have been called the Extreme Close-Up that they did later on.
Who knows?
Was the footage from France on this tour part of it too? That's on YouTube, where they're all kind of singing around an acoustic guitar.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, this MTV coverage doesn't seem to help, because the overall attendance on this tour, although it's an improvement of the Crazy Nights tour, still averages about 6,500 a night. However, there are several more sellouts. Starts in Texas and winds its way through Texas up to the Midwest. They'll ultimately play Texas on 3 different occasions, doing 9 different dates, which goes to show just how big Texas is.
Yeah.
Let's see, what have I got here? On May 18th, they go to Detroit and play the Palace of Auburn Hills.
They got that whole show on YouTube, I believe.
There's 12,000 people in attendance, which would have been a sold-out show for the Cobo. However, the capacity in this building is 20,000. So there's that. I'm sure other bands of the era are pulling that. Def Leppard,
Bon Jovi,
Motley Crue. But Kiss, 12,000, like I said, if it had been at the Cobo, and I think the Cobo was still open, they could have played the Cobo. They probably should have. It would have looked better to have a sold-out show at a major arena like the Cobo than a half-filled room in a major arena like the Palace at Auburn Hills. But that's just speculation. I don't know. The next night, they do have a sellout in Toledo, Ohio, but the sellout's 7,000 people, smaller building.
Right.
Another sellout in Fargo, North Dakota on May 26th. June 2nd in Des Moines, Iowa is a sellout. June 6th, Columbus, Ohio is a sellout. June 7th in Dayton, Ohio, sold out. So they're having some sold out shows. Interesting. June 20th, Providence, Rhode Island, under the demand of Larry Mazer. What gets returned to the set for the first time in 10 years? I Was Made for Loving You.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like totally against it, but he was like, no, this is going to go over great. So they learned it, played it, relearned it, I guess. I don't know. Played it, and it went over great and stayed as part of the show for the rest of the tour.
Yep.
July 3rd, after a show in Springfield, Massachusetts, Paul's limo is involved in an accident, resulting in the July 5th show in New Haven to be postponed. Now,
and he gets very butthurt about this in his book.
Yeah.
He gets so upset. Yeah, this is one of the few times where you do kind of feel for Paul. Supposedly, no one checked up on him. And, by the time he got back on the road, no one mentioned it. No one was like, hey, you feeling all right? And kind of, checked in. Everyone was just like, all right, back to business.
Well, he returns to action on July 7th in Albany, and no one cares.
Even the band, apparently.
And then somewhere in this, I don't think it's yet, where does he hurt his ribs? I forgot to put this down in my notes. He
I
hurts
thought
his
that
wrist.
was part of that car wreck.
It's a separate incident where he slams into a guardrail. I think while he's doing his maybe his trapeze act or some shit, and busts up some ribs. And you know, I'm sure it was painful. July 25th. This is noteworthy for me personally. This is Charlotte, the Charlotte Coliseum, the second Charlotte Coliseum, which has since been torn down. I was at this show. This was Eric Carr's 10th anniversary show. Although they made no mention of it except a brief passing. Hey, it's Eric's 10th anniversary. Woo, all right, woo.
I was made for loving you.
You know, there was no formal celebration. They didn't bring a cake out or anything like that. Or nothing. Didn't bring him down front or anything.
They gave, like all good employees on their 10-year anniversary, they gave him a pizza party.
Probably. They didn't give him a pizza party, but they did They go, oh, we'll pay for the pizza. Yeah. When you get back to your hotel tonight,
room service is on us.
Room service is on us. The Domino's is on us.
Gee, thanks, guys.
There was a heavy promotional push locally for this gig, but it was set up in what they called a half-house configuration. The Charlotte Coliseum at the time had been built for the Charlotte Hornets basketball team. It replaced the older Charlotte Coliseum, which is now referred to as the Bojangles Arena. It was 2.5 times the size, probably. I think capacity at the old arena, full capacity. I think the record was Hank Williams Jr. I think they squeezed 12,000 people in there. This holds the all-time indoor attendance record that I believe still stands, and this building has since been torn down for the second Coliseum, was Def Leppard, who had 23,000.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
And this, it was set up with a capacity of 10,000 under this half house thing where they draped off half the arena. So half the arena was just not even available, and they had these big black drapes that came down and just literally cut the arena in half. And the arena was set up, the design of the arena was an oval shape as opposed to a rectangular shape. So it kind of gave an amphitheater kind of effect for this half house thing.
Yeah.
And even to that, they sold 6,500 tickets. The opening bands that I saw, I believe, were Slaughter in a band called Danger Danger.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I think it was Danger Danger. It was either Danger or Dangerous Toys. I don't remember which. No memory hardly of these bands at all. I do remember after the show was over, I went with a friend of mine named Jack and his girlfriend, whose name I can't remember, and we're walking out afterwards, and Jack's going, well, what'd you think? You know, because I was the Kiss guy.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you know what? I think that's the last time I'm ever going to go see them. And he kind of looked at me and I said, unless they do a reunion with all the original guys, I am never going to go see this band again because it wasn't good. I'd never liked, and this is going to be
because you saw how many tours before this?
With Kiss?
Yeah.
2.
Okay.
This was my 3rd time seeing them. I saw them on the Crazy Nights tour and the Asylum tour.
Yeah.
But I realized watching them, I was like, even though they opened with like "I Stole Your Love," you know, and
God of Thunder was in the set.
God of Thunder was in the set, and they did bring up the Kiss logo at the end, but it was weird and wonky looking. It didn't look right to me. And I was like, man, they didn't even have the care and concern to build the lighted Kiss logo correctly. And I've gone back and listened to, since there's videos and bootlegs. And this is going to be heresy. I don't like the way Eric Carr plays these songs. He doesn't have a feel for these. He doesn't have any swing to his playing.
Right.
He's an excellent drummer. I'm not knocking him. And there was a vicarious thing about Eric Carr joining the band. And I like Eric Carr even as a drummer. I don't think he was the right drummer for Kiss.
I
think all of this was coming to a head during this tour. I think they knew it. I think he knew it. He loved being in Kiss. He identified being in Kiss. But he wasn't a hard rock fan. And a lot of people miss that. He was a fan of R&B. He really loved like Howard Jones. This was, so he's playing at a level, a very high level, but he's not playing stylistically his true love, and he doesn't have a feel for these songs. And they felt very stodgy and wooden and clumsy. And I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, and I know that brings a lot of heat on me for saying that. It's not a put down of Eric. That's how it was.
Yeah.
They just didn't play. They were playing. They played I Want You. They played I Stole Your Love, but they didn't play him good. I certainly don't like it. Bruce is playing.
I was gonna say Bruce's solos and all the classic ones were like, just, his own solos. Like he doesn't try to play the Ace version on a few of them, but which is fine. But even then, the choices he made are kind of wonky too.
Well, for a little bit of lightning on this, the very next night on July 26, 1990, in Greenville, South Carolina, there is absolutely no notes about the set list, anything about that on the KISS FAQ, except for one sentence. 96 patrons were charged with alcohol-related offenses during the show.
Woo! South Carolina! Woo!
Well, it's interesting because most of these summer dates are across the southern U.S., the southern states, and are all met with fairly unimpressive attendance figures, averaging about 4,000 people a night. That gives or takes. There's some that's only 3,500 a night, which is pretty abysmal. Mm-hmm. They did really well in the Midwest, which is their stronghold. They do okay in the Northeast. Then, Texas shows are kind of hit and miss too.
But honestly, for a tour that wasn't even going to happen, this is a pretty long tour.
It's a long tour. It's 6 months. They head out. They get a sellout in the L.A. market at the Long Beach Arena. It's not the Forum, but it's still an impressive sellout. The wine's back through Texas again. Like I said, they go through 3 times, 9 total dates. Here's what's interesting to me is on October 14th, they return back to the Palace at Auburn Hills, right? So this is, what's the date on this I've got? I just lost it.
But yeah, they go back to Auburn Hills after, only drawing, was it 12,000 or something like that?
So May, June, July, October. 4 months later, they come back and they do just as well. They draw 12,000 people. Actually, they do, according to what I've got, they drive 12.5.
Okay.
So they do 500 more people than the previous show. But whatever, that's still pretty cool. Detroit loves them some KISS.
Yeah.
So that's really good. And their tour finale is at Madison Square Garden. I didn't write the date down for that. It's November.
I gotta pull it. Let's see. It's sometime in November.
Is it
Madison.
November 9th?
Yep. Yeah. November 9th.
And it's almost a sellout. They're right there at it. And this is, of course, noteworthy because, they're a really good turnout for them at Madison Square Garden, which, of course, we've talked about. That's never been a money gig. It's always been a prestige gig.
And they haven't had success there in recent years.
And it's also important to note that this would prove to be Eric Carr's final show with KISS.
Here's the thing too. Here's a little excerpt from a local review. It says, as soon as the group KISS came huffing out of the head of the giant Sphinx at Madison Square Garden on Friday night, it was clear that the band did not share an artistic sensibility with the previous group, Winger. Whereas Winger had been an aerobatic, almost ballet in his movements, the KISS members lumbered around and fell into splits which seemed as if they may not recover from. Running around seemed to pain them, and the rails and the risers of the stage were padded as if to protect the band. Occasionally, as a sign of rebellion, the band's guitarist Paul Stanley flung a leg over the padding and looked stuck. The vultures were flying overhead.
Oh, God, Jesus.
We get it. They're old.
That really wasn't far removed from my impression when I saw them. And I hate to say that because I was excited to go. And I walked out of there that night feeling really disappointed. Just really unimpressed. Mm-hmm. So, but that's 124 shows across 6 months and a profitable tour overall, which is a step in the right direction for the band to reestablish themselves. And considering at the start of the year, they were probably at their most splintered point of their entire existence, I think they had enough to pat themselves on the back for. So if this didn't totally revitalize them, it helped a little bit, at least, put a little more
shot in the arm.
Yeah, a little shot in the arm.
Yeah, and both Gene and Paul's books, they both reference that near the end of this tour, things seemed to kind of be leveling off, and like they could kind of see like that little bit of a flicker at the end of the tunnel. Because Gene was saying, like, even in his personal life, he said he kind of felt like he finally got a rein on what was important, focusing on Kiss again. Things with Shannon were going good. Nick was born by this time. So he said, like, a lot of his personal life things were going good. Paul was kind of figuring his shit out. And, you know, unfortunately, I guess what we'll cover in the next episode, things, as soon as they start looking bright, sometimes.
Fate's going to intercede. It's just interesting to note that, you know, as a live act, it seems like they've still got a little bit of potential there. Whether or not the promoters are recognizing that, I don't know, because a lot of the success of this is placed on the shoulders of they've chosen well chosen opening acts. Slaughter, Winger, I forget who else has opened on this.
Danger.
Yeah,
but Dangerous Toys.
but Slaughter and Winger both had very
hits.
Successful runs, and so their own album sales aren't as good as their opening acts, which is probably not a good thing. So where they go from here is really kind of a question mark. And like we're about to say, there's going to be a major setback, which of course we will talk about on the next episode. Mm-hmm. We examine the Revenge era, and a lot of people feel like this was Kiss's return to form. We will discuss whether or not that is in fact true. And hopefully you will all join us for that episode on No Time to Turn.
Thank you for listening. Please insert another coin by supporting the show for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/somethinggoodnetwork.